This is ASAP Pathway. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of ASAP Pathway, the podcast. I'm your host today, Dr. Stacy, and I love that Dr. Michelle's here with me, my partner in ASAP. How are you this morning, Michelle?
I am doing very well. Hello, everybody. So glad to be able to join the podcast.
I love when you can come on. I know everybody's schedule. It's like to get my schedule with a guest schedule, but then to get your schedule, which you're like impossible to nail down because you're so busy. It's like an honor for me to have you today.
It's an honor for me to be here as always.
Uh, well, it's an honor too for both of us because we have a special guest today, Dr. Jaren Argyle. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
And I think this is just actually, a shout out to Kip Covington, who we had on a recent podcast. And he just brought up the important, it was actually, you know how we have the best conversations when we stop recording the podcast sometimes?
We should just not stop recording. We
I
should just say,
know,
okay,
because,
we're done with the podcast and just keep talking.
and we keep
Like
talking and
film it. Yes.
yeah, and we're like, crud, why didn't we say that in the podcast? He brought you up, Jaren, and said, oh my gosh, you have to have him on. And then I was looking more into you and understanding where you're coming from. And I'm like, what an asset. Everyone needs to hear what you have to say today. So I'd love to introduce you really quick and we can just jump in if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sounds great.
All right, Dr. Jaren Argyle. He's the founder of The Elevated Dentist, and he is a practicing general dentist in northern Utah with a specific emphasis on the treatment of sleep-related breathing disorders and temporomandibular joint disorders. And Michelle is clapping about that in the background. After experiencing some life-changing events, he now helps dentists suffering from a lack of fulfillment in their personal and professional lives, helps them create and live the lives they've always wanted when they came into the profession in the first place. I was, looking around on your website, The Elevated Dentist. It's actually info.theelevateddentist.net, and was watching your video. It was very touching, moving, and you know, I'm sure, Jaren, you're on a lot of these forums just like Michelle and I, and unfortunately you see a lot of unfortunate things happening in dentist lives that there's a lot of sadness, a lot of broken families, a lot of just brokenness. And it's probably the human experience. You could probably transfer this to any profession. But dentistry has just kind of always been a unique, higher rate of, unfortunately, suicide than most professions. Um, and I want to dive into why is that? Tell us about your journey. Tell us your story.
Okay. Well, do you want to hear why that is, or do you want to hear my
Well, let's do
story
that. I
first?
kind of, you know what? Answer that question and then tell us your story.
Okay. So one of the main reasons I think dentistry is affected so significantly with this problem is basically it's the perfect milieu of personality traits.
Mm.
Most dentists have three main traits that I've found as I've worked with different clients. The first one is we are high achievers. Without doubt, very seldomly will you meet a dentist that isn't a high achiever. They never would have got to dental school. They never would have made it through dental school. So we have that drive. We have that desire to perform. The second thing is we are perfectionists. We want to do things perfectly, um, no matter what it is that we do. We are always striving for that ideal scenario, that ideal crown prep, whatever the ideal outcomes. You look at our outcomes. I mean, we have so many procedures that have like success rates in the 90 somewhat percentile. And when we have something that fails, we're so hard on ourselves. Where you look at medicine and their success rates are like in the 50th percentile and they're thrilled.
Do you
And
think
so,
that is something self-induced or school culture induced or both?
I'm still trying to figure it out, the chicken, the egg, not sure which one it is. I think that it goes both ways. I think that a huge number of dentists to begin with have that, but then when we get into dental school, it is just hammered upon. Because if you think about it, go back and think of your dental school experience. And to no fault of the professors that are there, because there's amazing professors, but and maybe it's changed, I don't know. But they are trying to get you to get the exact. I mean, when you're trying, and I'm gonna get in trouble for this because I don't remember the taper that's supposed to be on the ideal crown prep. I want to say it's 6 to 10%, but I can't remember for sure.
Jaren.
So I'm sorry, but one thing you're going to find about me is I let those types of things go.
Yeah.
I know that if it's 11%, it's going to be okay. If it's 5%, it's going to be a little bit tighter fit, but it's going to be okay. But you think about that. You think about when you did those preps, whether it was a prep for an MOD or whether it was a crown prep, and your facilitator would come over and look at it, and they'd be like, "Yeah, you need to have that a little bit more parallel." Um, and so it does. It hits on us, and I think that we probably have some of that already innately driven into us before that.
Mm.
And I think it just is expounded upon when we're in dental school. But then the third characteristic, so you got your high achieving perfectionist, and our third downfall, which I don't think any of these are downfalls. We just have to learn how to work with them, is that we're caring. Most dentists genuinely care about their patients. It's why we do things for free when we shouldn't do them for free. It's why when something does go wrong, we blame ourselves. We don't blame the patient. In fact, I know the three of us kind of all got to know each other a little bit through the Spencer Study Club several years ago. But one of the things that Jameson taught me that will forever change the way that I practice is it is always the patient's fault. And that changed the way that I practice because I used to always think that it was my fault.
Mm.
And no matter how many anterior composites, class 3, class 4 restorations I had done, every time one of those chipped off, it was because I did something wrong in the bonding process. Maybe it was the etch that I was using. Maybe I didn't leave it on there long enough. Maybe it was the bond. Maybe I need to get a different bond. Maybe I didn't rub it on the dentin for long enough. All of these different things. But then it didn't speak to why was it so successful in so many other patients. And so I started really looking at that and started trying to place the blame on the patient, which sounds heartless, but it makes you start looking at other things. Perfect example of that is if a patient comes in, you do a crown on them or you do some fillings, they come back a week later and they're just screaming in pain. Well, why do a lot of patients come in at their 6 month appointment say, "Oh yeah, when you had this feeling down, or ever since you did this crown, it's just felt a little bit different. It hasn't bothered me or anything. My bites just felt a little bit different." Well, it's because the one that's screaming in pain is clenching their teeth all the time. They're grinding their teeth. It's the same thing with people with TMJ issues. Why doesn't every single patient that doesn't have an ideal occlusion not have TMJ problems? So part of that caring aspect that we have to give ourselves grace. And I don't think very many dentists do that.
Mm.
And so I think between those three things, it just creates this perfect storm. You probably remember the movie. That was the perfect storm up there in New England. And it was these three storms that were all coming in. And we've got these three personality traits that are all coming in. And we're never taught how to handle those things. And we're also never, well, I guess the other reason why we're not is because our focus is somewhere else. As a dentist, you come out of dental school, you are overwhelmed with, okay, I don't even know what I'm doing from a procedural standpoint. So we hit the CE courses hard. We're learning how to do all the things that we learned already better, and then we're taking on new procedures. We're starting to learn how to do implants. We're learning how to do ortho. We're bringing on these different procedures, sleep, TMD, all these things that we don't learn very much in dental school. And then the things that we do learn a lot about, but we maybe just don't feel as well trained or as experienced in them. And then several years down the road, we start to get comfortable clinically, but then we also realize, oh, I own a dental practice. I own a business,
Yeah.
and I don't know a single thing about a
Oh,
business.
yeah.
And so then we have to start going into all these other all these other things. And there's so many consultants out there, so many people that are going to help you to build your practice, and they all say that they're not cookie cutters. Um, and they're all going to customize it to you, but ultimately, the one thing that I think that most consulting groups miss out on is they don't sit down with the dentist at the very beginning and say, what is it that you want? Like, what do you want? And not only do that at a superficial level, but really dive in and get into the psychology of it and help the dentist to understand what it is that they truly want. Because most of the time, most dentists want what the industry tells them that they want.
So I mean, you're describing most every dentist right now. There's probably some rare outlier that's like, I've never had those issues. I've always given myself grace. I didn't take myself too seriously in dental school, and that's rare because I just remember in school, like going into locker rooms and, because we had a shared locker room, and I remember there's one guy who, oh, I heard him crying and yelling at himself in his locker. Like he had his head in his locker. He thought he was alone in the locker room and he was yelling at himself and crying, like berating himself. And I just was like, what is happening right now? Like this is not normal or okay. So obviously you're describing most. I think the culture's changing a little bit. My associate is younger than me, and she went to a dental school she laughs and says, we were a lot more kumbaya. Like I describe my dental school experience and she describes hers. And I'm like, on one hand, I'm glad, but then I'll be honest, that's not fair. Like I didn't get that kind of experience, like on one hand, and I sometimes feel like those instructors are like, well, if my instructors were hard on me, I'm going to be hard on you. And the things that they're just being a little more lax and giving a little more grace and not so militant. So it is changing, I think, the culture, but you still have the personality type being drawn to dentistry. So what happened for you? Because you're describing it, and Michelle and I are like, uh-huh, and a lot of people listening are like, yep. But something clicked, something happened with you that made you jump off the rails in a good way of the typical trajectory of what a dentist life owning a practice should look like. What was that for you? What was your aha moment?
Well, my aha moment happened shortly after a almost devastating moment, which is what happens a lot of times in our lives. So I graduated from the University of Connecticut. Hopefully, we're gonna get a national title this year here.
Yeah.
Um, Graduated from the University of Connecticut in 2005. Had an amazing experience in dental school. I really enjoyed dental school. Had a good time. I definitely had more kind of the kumbaya type thing. Enjoyed being with the other students. In fact, dental school for me ended up being less busy than undergrad because I was working
Hmm.
30 hours a week when I was going to undergrad. I kind of started life a lot earlier than a lot of people. I got married uh, right after my freshman year in college. Got married at 21 or 22. I can't remember. I'd have to go back and
Wow.
do the math. And my wife ended up getting pregnant 6 months into our marriage. So when I got to dental school, I had a 2-year-old son.
Hmm.
Um, we ended up having a daughter when we were in dental school our second year, and life was good. We moved out to Utah. When I graduated, I purchased a practice immediately out of school. While I was in my senior year, I was looking at different practices in Utah. Ended up purchasing one about a month after I graduated from dental school. And I was the only dentist in there. The previous dentist was leaving, no mentorship or anything. So I kind of had to learn the school of hard knocks. I knew that I knew enough information to not get myself in trouble clinically, and not make any of the big mistakes. I had no idea what I was biting off from a business standpoint. Like I had not had a single business class in undergrad. I think I took economics class that I had to take for my general requirements, and that was the only business class that I had there, anything even related to business. Just started doing stuff, working, doing things that all the dentists do, and it seemed to be good. I was hitting milestones, our practice was growing, we had adequate income. Um, Fast forward to 2012, we start building a home. We had purchased a home right out of dental school. We're living in that, and we had bought some property, and we're starting to build our dream home. And I started noticing things were kind of little rough, little rocky between my wife and I. And up to that point, I mean, at this point, 2012, we'd been married for 14 years. Um, and things seemed off. And I didn't really know what they were. Things were good at the practice. And again, when we say things are good, it's our perspective of what they are. And so when I look back, I can see, financially, things were good at the practice.
Yeah, you're hitting markers that most practices are like,
all of this all of the successes that are defined by all of the KPIs,
mm,
I'm hitting them.
Mm.
Um, and unfortunately, at the time, that's what defined success for me. Fast forward to 2013, in June, I remember my wife and I got in a massive argument. Um, I'm a very God-fearing person, believe in the power of prayer. And after we got in this massive argument, I got down on my knees and just said, help me. Like, I'm at my wit's end. And growing up, I had been taught that one of the most important things in my life should be my marriage. And I was experiencing my marriage failing.
mm, yeah.
And to me, that all of a sudden helped me realize made me feel like a huge failure. Um, as I got up, I went down to our basement and I got on the internet and I started looking up ways to commit suicide.
Hmm.
Um, and sat there for 15, 20, 30 minutes. And I felt horrible. Like I can't even describe the way I
Hopeless.
felt. Hopeless is a perfect word but also I knew the ideations I was having were wrong. I knew
Mm.
they weren't the right thing, but I continued to go down that path. And so I left the computer, I jumped in my truck,
Would you
and I
say
just
that's the definition of like, were you experiencing intrusive thoughts? Like,
one 100%.
hmm,
Yeah. And I knew I had to get away from it. I had to clear my head. I had to do something different than what I was doing. Jumped in my truck, just started driving, had no direction where I was headed. I was just driving. Ended up I realize I'm kind of hungry. I haven't eaten anything. I swing by a grocery store, go grab like a little snack, and I happen to grab a green 8 by 10 spiral notebook and a pen. And as I left the grocery store, I thought, okay, I'll go up the canyon. And as I'm driving up this canyon, it's a super steep, windy canyon. It's not like your typical canyon that you're down in the valley of the canyon. You're going up the side hill of the mountain. And as I'm driving up there, I'm like, this is how it can happen.
hmm,
I unbuckle my seatbelt. Because the other part of me is saying, I love my wife. I love my kids. I've got great life insurance. I want them to be able to benefit from this. And if I take my own life, I don't know that they can. And I want them to be able to be taken care of. So it's such a
hmm,
screwy thought process because you're like, I'm going to end my life, but I want my family to be okay, not realizing how not okay they're going to be if I do this. And as I drive up this, I'm looking at different curves in the road and I get up to the top and I pull off to the side of the road, and I just get out of my truck and just start walking. I see a little picnic bench up there, and I go and sit down at it. And I don't know if initially I was like, this is again how your thoughts just, you're so messed up that you don't have a clear line of thinking. I'm about to write a suicide note, but at the same time, I know I can't write a suicide note because then I can't get the light. So and this is a perfect example of how we as dentists and how we as our brains are just constantly going, going, going. We'll talk a little bit later about how we got to shut that down if we really want to be able to go the distance in life and really have true success. But I sit down to this picnic table and I just start writing. And I'm just kind of putting my thoughts on paper. It doesn't end up being a suicide note or anything. And by the time I get done writing, probably 4 pages worth of just jotting stuff down, I kind of had this calm, I had this peace to the point where I was like, I know this isn't the right thing to do. I'm not going to do this. I need to figure out a different solution to this. And I was able to make it back down the canyon. I'd love to say that things were amazing and exciting and wonderful between my wife and I after that. It wasn't. It was tough. But two things happened at that point. I switched from external loci of control to internal loci of control. I no longer defined my worth or my value by whether or not my wife was happy or not.
Ooh, that's good.
And up until that point, that was I feel like I'm a very confident person. I've felt confident in everything, with exception of my marriage. I always had to hear my wife tell me that she loved me. I always had to hear my wife acknowledge me and let me know that she appreciated me and that, hey, thanks for doing this and hey, thanks for doing that. So at that point, I started to realize I can no longer let these outside points define who I am. What defines who I am is what's inside of here. And that was a massive transformation for me. And it started literally a journey that's still ongoing today, of self-improvement, of improving myself. And one of the most interesting things that came from this, and it makes me sound very calloused, and most of the wives out there probably won't like hearing this, but I learned that I don't need my wife. I do not need her, but I want her.
You want her. I was just gonna say,
Yep.
And a
such a
huge,
difference. Yeah.
yes, it is such a massive difference psychologically.
Mm,
And if you can, anything that you say that you need in life, if you can psychologically turn that into a want,
yeah.
perfect example is my wife. I know that I could be okay in life if she came to me tomorrow and said, hey, Jaren, you know what? We're done. I've been meaning to tell you this for years. I can't stand you. I know I could go on with my life and be able to be very successful and be able to be very happy. But the difference is by wanting her in my life, it helps me to know she is an enhancement to my life.
Yes.
She is something that makes my life better. And like I said, if you can change needs to wants, it's a massive, massive thing. So I like to think, and the way that I go about, there's not a whole lot of anything that I need in this life. It's just things that I want. And it does really good things for you. But the sad thing is, and it's interesting, we've got I was talking with a lady that her husband um, passed away by suicide about 2 years ago, just last February, here in Utah. And he was an orthodontist, which we all think orthodontists don't have problems. They've got it made, you know. I'm an orthodontist. But I've had I'm currently serving as the health and wellness chair for the state of Utah for the Utah Dental Association. And I've had some conversations with her and just being able to kind of see her version of it and how she didn't see any of it. In
Mm.
retrospect, she can look back and she could see some red flags and stuff, but nothing that she ever would have thought of at the time. And it's very, very sad because for me, I had never even considered suicide. Like this was not like something where I was thinking about it day in, day out. This was a 1 day occurrence, and I can't tell you how close it came to happening. And so that's why that is one of the reasons I'm so passionate about what I do, because I know in the world of dentistry, our anxiety, our depression, our suicide levels are not going in the right direction. And I know the American Dental Association is trying their best to improve upon that. I know the state associations are trying to, but I think just like with the government, sometimes our bigger groups can't be as effective as some of the private organizations. And I just saw a need and knew that I could impact other dentists' lives. And the great thing is not only does it impact them personally, but it impacts them professionally. It makes you such a better boss. You're a better leader. Your team will enjoy being around you more. Your patients will love you even that much more because you don't let things get to you like you did before. And the other thing is I've found that so few dentists, this kind of gets back to creating space in our lives. So few dentists, because we are so busy and we wear so many hats, we don't take the time to truly define what we want. We just go. We just learn more CE. We think, oh, this is the next best thing. This is what I've got to do. Oh, this is going to increase the productivity of my practice. And we just go, 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 go. And we never step back. And one of my favorite quotes is by Stephen R. Covey, and it talks about um, climbing a ladder. And I wish I had the quote in front of me. I should look it up really quick, but it basically says, the higher you climb on a ladder that isn't on the heading towards the right destination, the further it takes you away from where you want to be. And that was a massive bad quote. I'll look it up here in a minute. Because he says it much more eloquently than me. But there's one of the things that I've found as I've really dived deep into this is I believe in universal truths. I believe in when you find multiple individuals who are at a high level who have the exact same opinion, you should pay attention.
Mm.
And there are multiple individuals who have spoken to that exact same thing. If that it's so important for you to define a destination, because if not, you're going to go whatever way the wind blows.
And
And in
Jaren,
dentistry, the wind is blowing higher productivity, more new patients. I was talking with Michelle before. Very seldomly do we talk much about profitability. It's more about, okay, what is your revenue? And how many new patients are you getting? How consistent is your hygiene recall? How many patients are you getting rescheduled for this? What's your treatment plan acceptance? What are all these things which are, don't get me wrong, important in a practice, but how are they important in your practice?
and we talk about this in the practice breakfast club, and I'm just thinking about it because that's where we came from this morning, Stacy,
Yep.
right? So at the practice breakfast club, we were talking about setting fees and training team, and it's like not every office is going to set fees the same way or train team the same way or have the same team members or have the same team members with the same job descriptions because it all depends on what you would like for your practice. So, but really, thank you for sharing your story, Jaren, because I think a lot of us can see ourselves in the many aspects of the story that you've shared. And it's scary sometimes to know that it can come that close so fast in dentistry, especially because I think you have it right 100% that it's the perfect storm. And then a lot of practice owners practice by themselves with no peers. And so it's even more isolating and it compounds that effect.
Mm.
So you
100%.
talked about the internal and external loci of control, and it was one of the things that allowed you to achieve where, get to where you are. I was going to say achieve peace.
It is. It is definitely achieving peace through that. And I think that's a very accurate assessment.
Because looking at you and hearing your voice and hearing the way you tell your story, it seemed like yes, it was a very, very turbulent time, but you've made peace with it. You've been able to move forward. And that is something that a lot of people strive to do and don't always succeed. A lot of people are still in the middle of it. So that internal versus external loci of control that you said, I think we are primed as dentists. It's not a lot of physicians and professionals because we have been told all our lives how to succeed. What is the definition of success? After you go to high school, you go to college, you take these majors, you have to score this much on the MCATs or the DATs or the SATs, and then you move on to the next round. And then college, this is what the definition of success is. Dental school, this is what the definition of success is. So I feel like all our lives we've been primed to take that externally dictated system and externally dictated guidelines, rules.
Well,
This is your
measurements
lane.
of success.
Measurements of success, exactly. That we never actually exercise that muscle of, well, what does success look like for me? We've never had to really think about that, not until decades of schooling. And then all of a sudden we're let loose in the world.
Well, and it's about in being brave in saying my definition of success may not look like the rest of the world's or even my friends and being okay with that. And you said something about, I realized I don't need my spouse. And that could be, it could sound shocking, but in all relationships, like, and you said turn that into once. And it's just so, I've been on my own journey, just even stuff with my kids and feeling devastated if I feel rejected. And, they may not agree or they may have something to say about my parenting style and I can't control um, much of anything externally, if at all. And, the whole let them, that's been really
Hmm.
popular, which kind of is an echo of what you're saying. Like it's let them this and let your friend say, hey, you don't make me happy in this relationship or your spouse and I'm not saying don't be self-aware and make sure we're being respectful and things. It's not what I'm saying, but you know, you have to, it's let them, but also let me do what I need to do to find my own happy. And really, it's like putting the oxygen mask on yourself first and making sure, you have your hierarchy of needs in your life. I have a friend who, he's sober about 20 years now. And he said, look, people may not agree with what I'm going to say, but I have my higher power, God. I have my sobriety, then I have my spouse, and whatever it takes for that sobriety in my life and that vertical relationship and my value, my that has to always supersede anything else in my life because I can't be my best self and happiest self. I can't be the best husband or wife or parent if I don't have those things first. So, and it is interesting. Yeah.
When you are in that place, right? When you are, in that place where you're struggling, and we know that this might be one of the answers, the let them and let me. But how do you get there?
Yeah.
What are the steps that you can take? So for our listeners, for dentists and any other professionals, or if you're anybody really who's listening, and if you're in a place that we know we're not in a good place and we want to get out, but we don't know how. What's the first step?
I think that one of the very first steps, and this is another area where I think that dentists tend to have a little bit more difficult time, and dentists don't like me saying, we're egotistical.
Mm.
We have such big egos. I still remember one of my and hopefully he's not listening, but if he is, he may or may not remember in dental school, one of our classmates' dad was a dentist, and he refused to get on a step stool and change light bulbs in his house because he wasn't willing to damage his hands. And
Mm.
I don't know if he was just very uncoordinated. I'd like to not think that that's the case if he was a dentist. But to think that you're above a certain thing, and as dentists, we have a very, very hard time being vulnerable.
Mm.
And I think that's the first step because vulnerability is what allows you to start to see the truth. Um, there are a ton of steps. It's a very, very long process to be able to get to the point where it's no longer difficult to try and instill these new habits. And in essence, what you're doing is you are literally rewiring neural synapses. We have a subconscious mind that is constantly trying to protect us.
Mm.
It's a survival mechanism and it serves us very, very well. The problem is, as we develop, as we get into different stages of life, as we become a parent instead of being a child, that no longer serves us, but it is our default. And when situations go awry, when stresses rise, that is what we're going to go to.
Mm.
And so it's a matter of recognizing that, having the vulnerability first to be able to realize that, oh, I might not be right. Um, there's a mentor of mine. His name's Ryan Godfredson. He works on leadership. His whole thing. He's an organizational psychologist and he works on leadership. He's written a couple of really good books. The main one that I really like is Success Mindsets. Super easy read. If you ever hear any book referrals from me, you know that they'll be around the 200 to 250 page range because I don't go much further than that. And you'll know that they just flow when you read them. They're super easy, very, very good books. Anyway, he talks about these different mindsets, and you've got a fixed versus a growth mindset. You've got an open versus a closed mindset. You've got a preventional versus promotional mindset. And I've got to think of what the fourth one is, a inward versus outward mindset. Um, and really, what I've found with a lot of dentists is we tend to be very fixed in our mindset, and we seem to have a very closed mindset. Um, Closed meaning I'm right.
Hmm.
I don't see other people's perspective. That's great that you have that and that you think that, but it's not right. My way's right. And that becomes a huge problem as a leader in our teams, because we aren't open to suggestions from our team members. We may tell them we want suggestions, but they get tired of giving them when we just shoot them down because we're smartest. And unfortunately, it's really our teammates that are down in the trenches that are going to come up with the best solutions for our practices. You have to develop that team and help them to have a growth mindset and help them to be able to be contributors rather than just task doers. But I think an answer, I mean, really long answer to your question, it's starting out with vulnerability and being able to recognize that maybe the way that I've done things my whole life, or maybe the suggestions of other people deserve some merit.
Yes, and that's excellent. Something I was talking with my son who's having his own journey after college of where he's what he's wanting to do, and he was telling me the thoughts he's having, and something I've learned in my life, these in like you were having these intrusive thoughts out of the blue, just triggered by a specific event, and this hasn't happened to you before, but how many people, my gosh, make life ending, life altering decisions in the moment, thinking that the voice they're hearing is true or the voice they're hearing is right. And I told him, I said, just what you said, like we have this part of our brain that has been helping us survive all these years, and it's very fear driven, and it's very primal. And to understand that you are actually a witness of your thoughts. You're not your thoughts. Those thoughts aren't you. So to be able to step out and say, I had a thought, you witness the thought and then ask, is there evidence other than that thought? Like, and to challenge the thought, because a lot of people think their thoughts are who they are and that they're right. Instead of witnessing the thought and realizing it's coming, and thank the thought, it's gotten you this far in life because it's just trying to protect you, on in some ways. In other ways, it's just keeping you from living your life or even potentially ending your life. And I said, he had this really just wasn't a very logical thought. And I said, so you're witnessing that thought. What do you think of that thought? Do you have evidence contrary to that thought? He's like, actually, I do. And so just to get yourself to think beyond that intrusive thought and identify that not all thoughts are truth and not all thoughts are correct that you're thinking, and to step out of that. So you did that somehow. You didn't listen to the intrusive, fear-based thought. You started journaling. I'm just like, if there's somebody listening right now that might be even battling this, like you started journaling, you started just writing and you said you just felt peace and you felt better. Like what, getting things out? What happened? What was that? Do you think that flipped the switch from this horrible, intrusive, not accurate thought? I mean, that thought was not true. Your family is not going to be better off without you. It's like, what flipped that switch for you, you think?
And it's funny because I still have this notebook to date, and I'll go and it's actually extremely difficult to go back and read, but I find it very beneficial because it helps me always remember where I've been and where I'm coming from. And that's another huge thing that we don't do as dentists very often is we always compare ourselves to the ideal rather than comparing ourselves to where we came from.
Mm,
And as high achievers, that ideal is always way out there. And by the time we're reaching that, we've probably already changed the ideal to something even greater and grander. Another mentor of mine, Ben Hardy, Dr. Benjamin Hardy, he wrote a book with Dan Sullivan, who's another mentor of mine. It's interesting. In the last 3 years, I've probably spent over $200,000 in coaching and mentoring, and just I love, like, I eat this stuff up, and that's the other thing is I'm not just out here to teach people stuff. I'm walking the talk. Like I do this day in and day out so that I can be a better person. But the book that Ben and Dan collaboratively wrote together was called The Gap and the Gain.
hmm
Um, Phenomenal book. And if you are having any depression, any difficulties, and especially for dentists, because it's The Gap and the Gain, The High Achiever's Guide to Success, I think is what it's called. I can't remember the subtitle,
I was
but
gonna say I have it right here. I'm like trying to find
I know
it.
I've got it upstairs, but basically the gist of it is the gap is when we compare ourselves to the ideal. So in our practice, we have a production goal of 1.5 million. We get 1.4. We failed. As a dentist, we look at that and we think we failed. Well, what we don't take into consideration is what we call the gain. And the gain is that we only did 1.35 million last year. So we're at 1.4 million this year. So if we compare ourselves to where we came from, that's the gain. If we compare ourselves to the ideal, that's the gap. You want to live in the gain. Another perfect example is when you compare yourself to others. That's being in the gap. You should never compare yourselves to another individual because you have no clue what their circumstances are. You don't know what their ideals are. You don't even have any idea. And I did that a lot in the beginning of dentistry. I would go to certain CE events. I'd go to study clubs. I'd drive past an office, see their parking lot chock full of cars, and mine's got like three in it. And you're constantly comparing. You're comparing what other people are driving.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and if you haven't learned this already from your patients, we afford what we want to be able to afford. We're big into trucks out here in Utah. I have guys pull up in $100,000 truck, and then they have a hard time paying their copay for a crown, or they're dying of sleep apnea and they don't want to pay to have this appliance made for them. And so I think that as we kind of go back to what you had originally asked there, honestly, I don't know what happened. When I was journaling, when I was writing that down, I don't know what happened. I do think that because it hadn't been such a habitual thought process,
Mm.
the depression and the lack of feeling of succeeding as a husband was very much there for, I mean, probably a year almost, at least 7, 8 months. And so all of that was weighing on me, but the actual suicidal ideations was a quick, I mean, multiple hour thing. And I think what happened is as I started to write down things, it brought me back into my normal senses. It brought me back
Mm.
into who I was as a person, my worth as an individual. And I think that's going to be different for someone who is consistently having suicidal ideations. The first thing I'd do if you're consistently having issues that way, I would call someone, call a professional. Or if you have someone that you can trust that you feel comfortable talking with, talk with them. The tricky thing is if they're not a professional, it might be kind of hard for them to know what to say, and they might not say things that would be necessarily beneficial.
Helpful. Right.
Exactly. And there's helplines that we can go to if it's a chronic thing. If it's a one-off thing, kind of like it was for me, it's hard because your brain's just not thinking right at that time. And that's why that's one of the reasons that I created the elevated dentist, because I would love to get to dentists way before we even get to that point. I want to get to the dentists that are experienced, that just life's good, but it's not great. The people who are just miserable and have suicidal ideations and are um, depressed, anxious, they need to see professionals. Um, and the tricky thing is the whole world of psychology is evolving. They're basing a lot more on positive psychology now, which was really founded maybe 20, 30 years ago by a guy named Martin Seligman. He was a psychologist that kind of coined the phrase positive psychology, because what they used to do is they'd come in, they'd focus on all of the negative things and figure out how to get rid of them in your life. And now it's more, we're going to focus on all the good things and we're going to enhance those things, and it's going to help clear up the other things and really control more of your ability to handle those things as they come up. And so it's hard to say, Stacy, exactly what
Right.
is, but I think that we're kind of looking at kind of two different individuals. For me, I wouldn't even say that I was depressed. I wouldn't say that I was anxious. I just had a single day where all of the weight of the world finally collapsed on me.
Mm.
I had been bearing that weight pretty well for the previous 6 to 8 months. But if I could go back, what I would have done is I would have involved a lot more of my friends, families, and had conversations with them about the struggles that I was having and the difficulty. But the problem is I looked at that as betraying my marriage. My wife's a very, very private person, as I sit and tell our whole story. No,
She's had to kind of learn that.
she's okay with this now. But
Yeah.
at the time when we were having marital problems,
I understand this
she
fully,
doesn't want
Jaren.
people to know about that.
No. And you do feel like you're betraying. And again, it's a mixture of being vulnerable and
Mhm.
finding people you trust, because nobody wants to say, "Oh, my marriage isn't doing good." Like, and you do have to choose counsel wisely.
100%.
because sometimes you share and those people, like you're going to forgive, move on, and find reconciliation. But sometimes the people you shared that with, they're not going to feel the same way. And it can create, like your reconciliation is great with your wife. But then if you share with a spouse, a parent, or a sibling, they're kind of like, well,
They're
she's
going to
so
hold it against.
ungrateful. And they hold it against the person. And now you've got family dynamic issues. So,
Yeah.
it's choosing counsel wisely
Hmm.
about your marriage, or maybe it's a friend that like, look, they're just team you and they're gonna love who you love, and or getting with a counselor or getting with a coach, someone objective that doesn't have such a tie to your family, or or someone like they can talk to somebody like you. Like, so I mean, I personally in my own life have had situations in a marriage that I didn't tell my family. And they're like, why didn't you say something? Why didn't you tell us? And it was that exact reason. I'm like, if I told them that and then we reconciled, they'd hate him.
Well, and you don't want them to think any less of your spouse, or you don't want
Yeah.
them. I mean, it's the same thing with me. And it kind of goes back to somewhat of what Michelle had said earlier, the isolation that we have in the profession. Um, we can, even though we're part of study, in fact, we started a study club here in Northern Utah that we don't even talk clinical. We have a 10, 15
Wow.
minute case presentation, and then the other 2 hours is 100% on non-clinical things. We'll
Mm.
sometimes talk about business related things. We talk about health. We had a yoga session one time. This is a bunch of dudes, a couple of females. Utah, our male female ratios in Utah is horribly obscured, or skewed towards male dentists. I think we have like a 10% population of female dentists in Utah
What?
compared to like the 50%
Yeah, that's
everywhere else
highly
in the nation,
unusual
which is
nowadays. Yeah.
crazy. And so it's interesting because we've been able to get in, I think, the 16, we've got three female dentists that we've had in there, which is a way higher number than what we're used to having, which is unfortunate because I think that the female dentist brings such a massive thing to the profession. So we got to figure that out in Utah. We got to, female dentists that are out there, come to Utah. You have to be okay with being like the 49th or 50th lowest reimbursed state. Um, but
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
our insurance rates are horrible, and it's
Oh,
because every
no.
single dentist signs up for every single plan. So we've done it to
Mm.
ourselves.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I'll tell you what, living in Utah sure is amazing.
It's a beautiful place. It's a
Yes, lots
beautiful
of good
place.
stuff.
It's
It
a
is.
beautiful
I
place.
like
Well,
Utah.
I, Michelle, did you have any other
I
questions?
do.
I
I do.
thought so because I was
I
going to
wanted
talk. Go
I,
ahead.
I wanted to ask more about the resources for dentists because, as you talk about these two different, almost like two I don't even know how to say it, but there's two presentations, I guess, two experiences that people may have regarding this issue. It was great for me to hear about positive psychology. I've never heard of that before. And I think a lot of people have a thought or an impression that therapy would be very negative. And that's why a lot of people hesitate because it's like, if I'm already in a bad place, why would I want to sit for hours talking about all those things that I didn't want to bring
Yeah.
up in my head to begin with again. So that's something positive that I've learned today. So it sounds a lot happier than sitting in therapy talking about all the bad stuff. But for the people that are were like in your situation that may experience that, I love that you said the information beforehand is the most critical, right? Get this information to them before they need it, because then once they realize that they're in it and they're experiencing it, perhaps they'll remember the tools that you gave them and you talked about. And you said something about the ADA and our state dental society. You're in Utah, and we have wellness programs and wellness ambassador. What is the official title, Jaren?
It's the chair of the Health and Wellness Committee for the Utah Dental Association.
Okay, and you guys just had an event, you said?
Yeah, well, we did it back in last October. First time we've ever done it. And we had four different speakers come and present. We had one speak on financial health, just
Mm,
kind of understanding our relationship with money and
mhm,
how most dentists have a pretty unhealthy relationship with money. We had one on mental health. We had one of our individuals from our state society that deals with substance abuse come and present, and she did a little bit on mindfulness and some meditation and different things. We had one on physical health, and it was an individual from a business that helps out with longevity and wellness.
mm,
So really focusing on the positive aspects of things and rather than all of the negative things. And then we also had someone there to speak on relational health. Um, how can we enhance our relationships, whether that's professional relationships, get rid of the isolation that's going on, or whether it's with personal or intimate relationships. And we had a dentist actually present on that is just very, very good. He's a local guy here that I knew of. And just it was a great event. We did some activities after, like some of us went mountain biking, some of us went hiking, some of us went on a little river walk for people who can't get around quite as much. And we're going to be doing it again this year. So if anyone wants to come out to Utah to do it, we're slating it for November 13th right now. We don't have it solidified, but um, it was the responses we got back from it were very positive. And I think when you ask what can people do, one, if you're down in the dumps and you feel like you've got anxiety, depression, any of these suicidal ideations, I would reach out and get help. Talk with if you have colleagues, talk with them. Again, it comes back to our ego and that willingness to be able to be vulnerable.
Vulnerable.
What I would ask more so is those of you who aren't at that point, do something about it because you don't know you're at that point until it's almost too late. And it's never too late technically, but it's so much easier to correct early on.
Yep.
If you're starting to just not feel like you get much fulfillment in life, if you're starting to you're going to the office day after day and you're not excited to go to the office. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm never more excited to go in and do dentistry than I am to go out and ride my mountain bike. I would take my mountain bike hands down any day. But I do get a huge sense of accomplishment and enjoyment in going into the office and doing dentistry, working with patients with TMJ problems, helping out patients with airway problems, as well as being able to interact with my team and be able to help them grow. We don't have team members in the world of dentistry that are very growth oriented. They're very task
Yes.
oriented individuals. And if you can help your team members, if you can keep them to stick around long enough, but if you can help them to be able to take ownership and grow. In fact, I just had a conversation with one of my assistants 2 days ago about, look, we're going to ramp up our TMJ program and we're going to go big with it. I read Ben Hardy's Science of Scaling book. It was a big mistake because now it's got my brain going crazy. No, it wasn't a big mistake. It was cool just to see what we can do. And here in Utah, we don't have a ton of providers that understand how to treat temporomandibular joint dysfunction. And I feel a need to be able to get that out to the people. So we're going to put some big, hairy, audacious goals together. And I sat down and talked with my lead assistant for sleep and TMD and said, would this interest you? Would you want to captain this ship? And is this in your wheelhouse? Is this something that you would enjoy? And trying to find that, and it goes back to again, multiple individuals have talked about this. I don't know if you've ever heard of the zone of genius or unique ability. So those two are the same concept. Two different individuals that have arrived to the same conclusion. There's a whole nother concept called ikigai,
Yes. Yes.
Ikigai. All three of those things are the exact same concept, but they're coming from three different individuals. And when I see that, I know it's truth. And I guess Ikigai didn't come from an individual, it's coming from a culture, from the Japanese culture. But all three of them speak to we need to be operating in the area that brings us the most fulfillment.
Mm, yes.
And if we can structure more of our life into that, we're going to have way more fulfillment. We're going to have way less depression, way less anxiety. But the problem is we don't do that. And we don't take the time to figure out what that is. And so that's what we work through with clients is we help them do different things like that. We provide different tools to help them realize where can I be at my best, not only like physically, clinically, but mentally too. Perfect example is I gave up endo like 7 years into training. It was, or not training, 7 years into my practice. My practice was not busy by any means. I had open slots all over the place. So I was just literally giving money away because I had the time to see those patients. But every time a root canal came on my schedule, I hated it. And it's not that I so much hated doing root canals. I hated my ability to be able to tell which root canals would be easy and which root
Yes.
canals would be hard.
Right.
I was horrible at that. I'd get in one that I think would be a slam dunk, and I'd be like there, I'd have a ledge or
It's like that with
something would be happening.
extractions. Oh, this is a simple extraction, and you're digging,
2 hours
and
later, you're like ripping things apart. No,
yeah,
and so you have to find the things that you truly
yes,
enjoy and that you love. And really the whole basis of it with it is they have four different categories. You've got your unique ability or zone of genius, which those things are things that A, you're excellent at, B, you can get paid for because you don't want to be doing something you can't get paid for, especially in the world of business. C, you have passion for it. And D, most importantly, it provides you with energy. It fuels you. You could do it all day long. Your zone of excellence is all of those things, except for it doesn't provide you with energy. And the zone of excellence, unfortunately, is the golden handcuffs. It's the comfort zone that we get stuck in, and that's where burnout, that's where overwhelm, that's where all of these crazy things that are going on with dentists happen. Zone of competence is the next one. And those are the things that you can do, but you're maybe not the best at doing them, and they provide frustration. Endo fell in that for me 100%. And then you've got the zone of incompetence, which is the stuff that you have no business doing to begin with because you don't even know what you're doing. And if you can take all of your different things that you do throughout your day, both clinically as well as a business owner, if you're a business owner, as well as your personal things. So a thing that fell in my zone of competence personally was weeding. We have a lot of flower gardens around our house. And when we built our home and did our yard, I told my wife, I am not doing any weeding. You can do as many flower gardens as you want. I'm not weeding. Well, guess who has Fridays off and who doesn't have Fridays off?
yeah,
And so I weed because I see the weeds and I don't like having weeds. I hate
yeah,
it. So what do I
yeah,
do? I outsource it. I pay
yes,
someone else to do it so it doesn't provide anger, resentment, whatever it
correct.
is,
And
or
it's
just
not a failure. Like I did the same thing in my practice. It's like it's not that I can't physically do it. I don't like it. It doesn't bring me joy. What's that thing? You go through the closet. Does this shirt bring you joy? No, get rid of it. So it's kind of like the same thing. And I'm going to just go back to life is short. I'm going to go back to something Sandra Kahn said just about even how we view health and whether that's, us how we speak to our patients and or what you're saying, Jaren, it's let's get to this before it gets to horrible depression. And she said why don't you start using the word promote instead of prevent? So I'm going to wrap us up here before I do our little uh, rapid fire questions with you, but
okay.
maybe we can say what Sandra Kahn has I learned from Sandra Kahn, apply this to what you're saying. Instead of like preventing suicide ideation or preventing depression or preventing, it has such a negative, like, here comes the impending doom. I want to prevent what if we promote wellness and promote joy and promote a happy work environment and promote peace and look at promoting these things, and people can get with you at the elevated dentist to learn how to promote this in their life and switch to that mindset of promoting the life I want to live. And that will inadvertently, hopefully, offset these other things that we're trying to um, prevent. But
Yeah.
we're wanting to promote these things. I really appreciate you. We appreciate you being on today, Jaren. You have a wealth of knowledge. We could talk to you for hours, and we're hoping to, we were talking before the podcast, collaborate more with you within ASAP Pathway. And you're just, what you have to say is so important, and your experience, your journey, and your story. Thank you for being vulnerable today and sharing that. And I hope there's someone listening right now that heard your story, and hopefully it's going to put them on a different trajectory of promoting joy and happiness and fulfillment in their life. So thank you for being here. Um, I'm going to ask you the three questions before we get off, if that's okay.
That sounds great. I'm
Here you,
excited to hear what they
here we
are.
go. All right.
This is super fun because
I know, I
you come up with
know.
questions from out of nowhere. All
Some
right.
of them I ask sometimes the same question off and on, but okay, what's your ideal day off look like? I
My
think a mountain
ideal,
bike might be involved. I don't know.
yes, so it depends on the time of year.
Okay.
And you know what the amazing thing is I so often am living my ideal day now.
Mm.
I'm still practicing, but my ideal day would be get up in the morning. I like to get into a little bit of study. I like to read and do some stuff for the first half hour, 40 minutes of the morning. Um, get changed, go work out, whatever that may be. That like this morning, I had to get on a call at 6 a.m. this morning. So from about 5:30 to 6, I was doing 6 to 6:30. I was on a call. But then I went down and worked out in our gym. We have a gym in our own home. In fact, that there's a lot of things that you can do there, but really get up, work out in some way. Mountain biking would definitely be one of those things, depending on the time, depending on the opportunity. But ideally, I'd get out, go on a mountain bike ride. That usually will take me about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on what I'm going and doing. Um, come back and it's hard to say because there's a lot of different ideals. Some days it would be to have my wife and my daughter and her husband and their son. I am a grandpa. I became a grandpa in July, so
Ah,
that's an awesome
congrats.
thing. There's nothing cooler than being a 49-year-old grandpa because I know I'm going to be able to hang out with this little guy
Yeah.
and do everything that he wants to do. In fact, I just ordered up a $500 seat for an infant to go on my mountain bike so that I can take him on little
Ah,
rides. But some days it'd be hanging out with family. Other days it'd be getting on coaching calls. I absolutely love coaching. It is 100% in my unique ability. Um, I love to, one of my core values is to be able to help others help themselves.
mm, yeah.
Um, because I think that there's so much impact and so much power to that.
Yes.
And when I
Well,
get on, go ahead.
no, no, I'm like, it sounds like just it's even therapeutic, right? It's
It is.
cathartic. It's like for me to help another person. You know what? That's funny, and I'm not gonna. I'm don't want to trail here because I got two more questions. But I've said this. Sometimes the best way to get out of your head and feel better instantly is to help somebody else
Yeah, go serve
and
other people.
go
If
serve,
you're feeling
serve
miserable, go
others.
serve, and it's amazing what it'll
Yeah,
give. And
yeah.
to close off, I'd probably sit in my sauna for about 20 minutes and cold plunge for about 3 or 4 minutes right
Ah,
after that. That
good
is my
You're a
nightly.
biohacker too.
That is my nightly routine every single night, unless I'm out of town or something like that. It's kind of what tucks me into bed at nighttime.
Mm,
I go do that, and then I head up, get in bed, and it's just like it's amazing. And it's funny. we used to have a surf boat that we would use, and we kind of stopped using it as much. And so we sold that. And with the money that we had extra from that, I actually talked with my financial advisor. I'm like, hey, should I invest this or should we? He's like, well, if you invested it, by the time you're 65, it's going to be about this. He's like, that's really not going to be that big of a difference compared to what you're already working with. He's like, so just, do something fun with it. And so we had a little small gym in our room, in our home, and our kids are out of the house now. And we never used to go down in our basement. And I just told my wife, I said, let's do this. And so we had taken a trip for our 25th wedding anniversary. And just to finish up that story, my wife and I will celebrate 28 years this year. So we are still together. It's an amazing marriage. We want each other, which is fantastic. And we made it through those rocky times. But we decided to build out our gym, make it even triple the size of our gym, and put in a sauna and a cold plunge in there. And
Oh,
I'll
good
tell
for
you what,
you.
I have, I
Yeah.
literally, we finished it up in August or September, and I've probably had 15 days since then that I didn't use it.
Hmm.
So it's been very, very beneficial
It
for
was
me.
well worth
Well,
the investment.
yeah. Okay,
100%.
Michelle, what's your ideal day, Michelle?
My ideal day is to get up late.
Yeah, I see that with you.
Well, no, it's to get up late because I stayed up all night, living life. So yeah, I'll get up, I'll be outside, whatever it is. I'll read a book, I'll walk around, I'll move and be outside. That's just my ideal day. My ideal day is I could move. If I can move all day and not sit, that would be wonderful. And if I can teach all day while moving and being outside, that would be super perfect.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I have a lot of different ideal days, but I do love a good cup of coffee. If I can have a cup of coffee in bed and just kind of, do my whatever morning audiobook or podcast or, just whatever. I love that kind of stuff. And I don't know. I just, the older I get, my ideal day just looks very simple. And, having family time, knowing that I get to see my family later in the day, or, you know, um, I love driving. So I might drive around. I might then go by a river and, just watch, or a lake. I love going to a body of water too. Lots of different things. Okay, next question. What is something you're surprisingly bad at, Jaren?
Probably the worst thing that I've ever had a difficult time with is kayaking.
Oh my gosh,
What?
I love to kayak.
So,
I would never have guessed that.
in dental school, we had a buddy who was a big kayaker, big whitewater kayaker. And he brought me over to this lake that they had by their apartment complex, and he put me in his kayak, and he was teaching me how to roll the kayak. I cannot roll a kayak
Okay,
to
well,
save my
listen, if
life.
you
I
roll a
mean, come
kayak,
on.
to me, that's a failure. I don't want to roll my kayak.
Oh, so sitting on top of a kayak, I can do that, no problem.
Okay,
I'm great
good,
at that.
good.
No, I'm talking
Yeah,
about like for some reason, I cannot get the concept of how to so he would flip me over, so I'd be underneath the water upside down, and then you've got to reach up, put the paddle on the surface, and upright yourself. And I was horrible at it.
I
And
wouldn't
it's
I
even
think
funny.
that's
begin to understand how to do that.
So, because most other things, I'm very fortunate and I can get them very quickly, whether it's sports related, I mean, whatever it is, I've never really had a difficult time doing that. Just from a
mm.
talent standpoint, for some reason, rolling a
Well,
kayak
now
up,
I
I
know your
guess I should say,
kryptonite. I know that if we
upriding a
ever,
kayak is
yeah,
100% my
if we ever go
kryptonite.
kayaking, I know how to throw you, and that's just to like
Just tip me over and I'm done
flip you
for.
over, and you're done.
I'll just pull the skirt off and get out of the
You're
kayak.
like, I'm done. Go ahead, Michelle. What are you surprisingly bad at?
I don't know whether it's surprise anymore because you guys know already. But I'm bad at cooking. I mean, not
Really?
that I'm bad at cooking. It's just I want to do other things while the food is cooking. So, and I'm bad at time management. Well,
Oh.
I just not whether it's management. I just don't understand how time in my head can feel like it's 5 minutes, but it's an hour has passed. Right?
Yeah.
And vice versa. So, I underestimate the time it takes to cook or overestimate the time it needs. So I'm always trying to turn the flame higher than it should because I'm in a hurry, or I'm allowing the food to cook, but I'm multitasking. So then I allow it to cook a little too long.
Oh, well, it looks like you cook good. All your pictures look good, unless that's Rich's food that you're sending
It's
me.
both. It's both. If it's
Okay.
breakfast, it's me. I can cook breakfast,
Oh,
but everything else is rich.
oh, I mean, what I'm bad at, I mean, I'm bad at several things, I would think. I can't do a cartwheel. I don't do good with going upside down. I'm bad at that. Um, I'm bad at
Well, we do these
sometimes
things.
taking I work real fast. I am a little knee jerk, so I'm bad at like just kind of taking a pause, thinking things, that's what you're for, Michelle. Like I am already moving on to like, what do you need me to do? And you're
We
like, hold
balance each
on.
other perfectly
We
with
do,
that.
because you'll make me pause. Okay, last question. What
Oh,
is
this is
Uh-oh.
a
your
good one.
what is your
She's laughing.
go-to karaoke song, Jaren?
Oh,
You know what? I do not karaoke.
Well,
So I
if
don't
you
have a
had a
go-to
private
karaoke.
karaoke machine in your house and
But if I
nobody heard,
had one, it would probably be Bon Jovi Living on a Prayer
oh,
because my wife absolutely loves that song. And so
oh,
I anytime it comes on, she's singing it and she's turning it up loud. I remember when we used to have our surf boat and we'd go out on the water, and that was always the one that she wanted to surf to. And so that would probably be it. Now,
that
if
would
I
be,
had my own choice, I would probably pick
yeah,
I
this is your karaoke song,
back
Jaren.
in the
yeah.
day, I loved Nirvana, Pearl Jam.
Ooh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are probably the songs I would know the best. But I have a really hard time being able to sing when there's not lyrics being sung with me. And so if it was just the music and just the lyrics coming across the screen, I'd probably have a hard time.
it takes
It
a
takes
kind of
Michelle
practice,
loves
I think.
karaoke. What's
I
your
do. Not that I can sing. I mean,
Oh, you can. What would
it,
be a
it,
song that you would sing? I don't know.
I
A lot
think
of songs.
Broadway, Disney, like, Broadway
Mm.
standards, Disney things, old songs like, I don't know, Crazy, Patsy Cline.
Oh,
Uma
Patsy
Wood.
Cline, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. Oh yeah,
Mhm.
that's a good
Yeah.
one.
I want you to sing that.
Oh no,
Your Stacy is absolutely the best singer, one of the best singer. And
I do not even know where you get that. I
coming
don't
from
even
me,
remember
because I've been
singing in
exposed
front
to
of you.
so many people singing. Yes, I know good
Uh,
singing, and you do it.
let's do
One
a
of these
let's
days.
do a podcast karaoke style. I'll tell you a song I was like,
Make sure
uh,
I'm not a guest on that one, okay?
I'll be your
I don't know.
backup
I've got
singer.
all kinds of songs I like to sing. There's a few. I can't remember the names of some of them that Lady Gaga and oh, she sings in that movie
With
with,
Brad,
yeah, I love that
oh,
one. But then I
oh my
also,
gosh, I love that one too.
the, there's another song I've been
Bradley
blaring it
Cooper.
in my car and I'm like, I sound pretty good. And it's is it Never Enough?
Oh yes, Lauren
Never.
Allred. Yeah, Lauren
Yes.
Allred. Never enough.
Oh, I
Oh,
might
that's
be.
awesome. Yeah,
Oh, Mama
and
can sing that song in the car by herself. I'm really good at that one. So I think if I had
"Shallow" is the song you're looking
Yeah,
for.
I like that
Yes,
one. And then the one Never Enough.
never enough.
Oh, I love
Lauren
that one, man.
Allred. Oh my
I had
gosh.
my window down. A guy was next to me and I was at a stoplight and I mean, I was just going and I forgot my window was down and I look over at him and he was like rocking his head back, like, go girl.
Nice. You're giving a concert.
Never, never. I was just like going. Anyway, thanks for being with us today, Jaren. We'll be seeing more of you hopefully within ASAP. And thank you, listener, for taking the time. And I hope you go out today and promote a better life. Thank you, and we'll see y'all next time.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
This podcast would not be possible without the inspiration of my dad, Daniel Becker, and creative direction and editing from the very talented Jason and Dane Becker, Ben, Lydia, and Judah Walker. To stay connected and keep the conversation going, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and visit our website at asappathway.com. And please remember, the information in this podcast is for educational purposes only. It's not intended to be used as medical advice or to replace your healthcare provider's diagnosis or recommendations.